Welcome back to 5 Talk Street. I'm Scott Murray. 5 Talk Street is continuing NBC5's celebration of Black history with a package from NBC's Mark Hayes. Let's take a look.
I have heard the Nature Center described as a jewel, as a diamond in the crown of South Lake, just a very special area. And you said, wow, that is a word that I hear over and over again. Wow.
It's a sprawling park and one of the most beautiful in all of the great state of Texas. Folks come from all over the country just to drink in the incredibly gorgeous and picturesque landscape.
Our visitors literally come from all over the country. I've talked to people from New York, Ohio, Tennessee, Georgia, who've said, I'm visiting the area, I heard about the Nature Center, and I wanted to come out and take a look at it.
This is the Bob Jones Preserve and Nature Center, a crown jewel nestled in the city limits of South Lake, just a stone's throw away from Lake Grapevine, and a place that so many folks in North Texas flock to each and every year because there's something for everyone.
If you're a bird watcher, there's over 300 species of birds that have been identified here. We have programs cradle to grave. We have educational programs for toddlers all the way through seniors.
Many of the families that frequent Bob Jones Park don't even realize the rich history behind it. You see, much of this land was owned by a former slave, and as you might imagine, that wasn't very common back in the 1800s.
We are in an area of the country where, cash is king, as it were, and it's all about economic development. And I'm so proud to live in a community that saw the value of preserving what is essentially 700 acres of land. And that is very special and unique.
Deborah Edmondson is the president of the Bob Jones Nature Center and Preserve. Her primary function, to preserve this pristine landmass and to keep the Jones family legacy alive and well.
An important part of the story, too, that needs to be told is that the Jones family was a very prominent family within the area that we now call South Lake. And I think as we learn more, they in fact maybe were the most important and prominent family in this area for that period of time.
Affectionately known as Bob, born a slave back in 1850, the son of a wealthy white landowner named Leazer Jones. He and his wife, Meadie, had 10 children, and his grandson, also named Bob Jones, helped keep the legacy alive.
So he actually accumulated land. He just started buying land in the process, and over the years, he ended up with somewhere like 2,500 acres.
When you look back at the beginning of this family's legacy, what has this land accumulation meant to your family?
Well, it provided substance for us. We were, back in the 1800s, everybody had to supply everything themselves. You didn't buy hardly anything. You raised your cattle, you raised your hogs, you raised your sheep, you raised all your groceries and everything else. So having the land and having 10 kids, you had to have a lot of property and a lot of supplies to handle that.
And with a whole lot of land, he had a large family to go with it. Bob Jones began building a foundation for his family, which would be rooted in this large 2-story home. It burned to the ground, but it was just another obstacle the family had to overcome. As you might imagine, times were tough. Dr. Bob Jones remembers the many struggles.
Yeah, I actually grew up here, so I plowed this ground and I baled the hay.
So you know firsthand.
I know firsthand, yeah. Farming is hard work anyway.
But the historical significance of the Jones family extends well beyond land ownership. You see, Bob Jones was a stickler for education. In order to ensure his family was ready for the changing times and the volatile cultural and political landscape, he decided to use some of his land to educate his family.
What Grandpa did, he was really heavy on education. So he would, during the summertime, he would, when the schools were out in Dallas, he would hire teachers to come out and tutor his kids during the summer. Eventually, he built a schoolhouse close to his house, where his homestead, and hired teachers then to come out to come in and teach, because there were some other kids in the area, other families in the area, the kids were going to.
And that little schoolhouse was primarily for colored children, but it was predominantly attended by his family.
So would you say that's where the educational foundation of the Jones family was laid?
Yeah, that's where it came from. We all were expected to. We're never pushed. We were all expected to. But both me and my brother have doctorates.
And Bob Jones was also committed to his spirituality, and in order for the family to have a place of worship, well, Bob Jones built that too. In 1902, the Mount Carmel Baptist Church became the family's house of worship.
The church was right down on Whitechapel Road. It burned down several years ago, but it was just a one-room church, and basically it was a family church. It was all the family went to it, and we always had services on the fourth Sunday of the month.
We all know there's a certain amount of wealth here in Southlake, and that wealth affords a certain amount of freedom. For Bob Jones and his family, acquiring this land meant that they didn't have to deal with some of the explosive race relations and the growing pains that our country was dealing with at the time.
This area, there were very, very few blacks in this area. So there was never any real segregation in that sense. If you got into the bigger cities, yes, you had the separate water fountains and the separate toilets and all of this stuff, but that wasn't the situation when you were in the smaller towns. And my father and his family, were some of the wealthiest people around this area. Biggest landowners, some of the bigger landowners and everything else. So, and they were hiring a lot of people here.
And to further add to their legacy, the Joneses were able to knock down racial barriers, and historians believe that the Jones Brothers Cafe was the first integrated cafe here in Texas.
A lot of the truck drivers were black. So they came around they'd stop off, the cafe was the only thing between. There was nothing really in Roanoke at that time. So it was, once they got south of Rome, they had nothing until they got to Grapevine. So some of the truck drivers would stop and they come to the back door. So Lula said, "Young, you can, I'll serve you, but you're going to come and sit in the front." He said, it wasn't a matter of making it an integrated restaurant. It was just a matter of fact they ran a restaurant and they served whoever came in to eat.
And oftentimes for Dr. Bob Jones, a walk in the preserve is a walk down memory lane.
Now, I like Texas barbecue too. Is Texas barbecue big at the cafe?
No. No? We never did barbecue as a rule at the cafe because they didn't have the room, the space to have a pit or anything to really cook it good. Okay. So we always did it at a picnic. Okay. We had a picnic the second weekend of August every year. Grandpa started back in the 1890s.
And I think the fact that Dr. Jones is here, he's involved with the center, that's kind of like taking your hand and touching history.
This generation of Joneses realizes how important it is to keep his story alive, and he's doing it through the Bob Jones Nature Center and Preserve. But it took one passionate Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, Pam Muller, to help keep the namesake living on.
I think it's very family oriented and it's diverse. We offer a lot of activities out here. As you notice, there's soccer fields, there's baseball fields, there's a fishing pier, and there's this beautiful nature center. And this is probably the core of Bob Jones Park because, as you know, and you see around the Metroplex, that there's a lot of development going on. And as Mr. Jones mentioned earlier, you don't want to see cement.
Once she heard the story, she was so moved at the struggle and the amazing accomplishments of a family who overcame the odds during a period in our history when the odds were almost unbeatable. And the Jones family legacy stands for something the mayor says every community should strive for: a colorblind environment.
That is the legacy of the Jones, is they saw no color.
And why does that enhance kind of the value of the park?
I think our children need to know the history of racism its roots and the pain it caused, and that people can rise above that. And now we're well integrated, and that's the way it should be.
And today it's not just fun and games, it's learning about the rich history. It's observing the many gorgeous creatures that inhabit the preserve. You see, the legacy is in the land that keeps giving back for generations to come.
I love the Jones family story, and I love it not just because it's a story of, a slave owner who gave his son land. It's a story of success. It is an American success story.
Thanks, Mark. Don't go away. We're back with more of 5 Talk Street right after this.